What does it tell you about the Kamala Harris's campaign's internal polling?
Yeah.
That they know the risk anytime they put her in front of a camera is constellations and stars when we're talking about crime in inner cities, like that she is that stupid, and they still they think it's worth to take that risk because they need to get her out there in order to have a chance to win.
People have actual practical problems, and she has not said one practical thing that she would do to fix them. It's why she's struggling.
Saw there's this report that the Harris campaign has pulled ads from Wisconsin, buys there, and they're trying to redeploy them in Pennsylvania.
To Philadelphia.
Which, number one, if we are like 2.5 weeks from Election Day and now you're scrambling and moving buys, that doesn't seem like a well-oiled machine. And second, how much inventory is even left in Pennsylvania to be able to buy at this point?
Nope.
There's like so many contested races
Not at a
there.
good rate.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Just a catching strays over here.
You're in for a hell of a show.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
Good Thursday to you. Welcome back to the Ruthless Program. Josh Holmes, comfortably smug. Michael, Duncan, John Ashbrook, left to right across your radio dial. Thanks again for joining us, fellas. It's feeling fun again. We got a lot of stuff going on.
I gotta say, there's a feeling when you know you're winning, right? Yeah. Things are going really well for our side. Things are going terribly for the other side. We just got to put in the work, get those votes in the ballots, and we're going to win.
Yeah, it does feel like the Trump campaign has had a good couple of weeks. The Kamala campaign, which we will cover in some detail here, has had some struggles.
Has not had a good couple of
They've
weeks.
had some struggles. And it's both external, what it is that you're seeing, and internal that we'll tell you about in the course of this program. But we also have got a big guest today. Senator Tom Cotton has joined us here in the Variety program. He was our first guest.
First guest.
He is OG Ruthless guy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He comes in to impart some wisdom. He's been traveling around the country both on behalf of President Trump and all the Senate candidates, Republican Senate candidates out there, which is crucially important. If Trump wins this thing, his entire cabinet is basically beholden to having a Senate majority.
Yep.
And so right from the jump, incredibly important work that he's putting in. He's going to tell us all about all of that, so get ready for it. We're going to play King of the Hill, and then we're going to talk about the stuff that we talk about. We actually have some variety today, too.
Good stuff.
Can't wait.
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys amped?
Pretty amped.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty excited. I think, we talk a lot about the polls and all of that, and I know a lot of people who watch this or listen to this, like, you can get pretty obsessive about that stuff.
Yeah.
This time of year, because we just got a couple of weeks here left in the campaign, but I think equally instructive, beyond just the polls and the horse race, is what you see the campaigns actually doing.
Yes.
Because that tells you a lot about what they're seeing in their numbers. And Kamala is swinging wild right now.
Yep.
That's such a good point. It is such an excellent point. And a lot of you probably didn't see, but yesterday Trump went to what would be categorized as an unfriendly audience, a bunch of sort of Wall Street titans, where he subjected himself to an interview by this Bloomberg executive editor who, let's just say, doesn't see the world the same way as Donald Trump does, right? But what I watched was in a supremely confident Donald Trump, ably defending his view of our domestic economy versus this guy, and presumably many people in that room, throughout aggressively, right? It got contentious at a couple of moments. But he did so in a way that kind of won the crowd over.
Mm-hmm. That's what really got me, is these are, like you said, this is a very business-oriented audience. And then there's parts where they start cheering for Trump, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, I didn't see it coming. I figured it was
Standing
tough.
ovation. The guy got a standing ovation when he was done.
Yeah.
I think that just is a demonstration of where he is in this campaign. And, it's also a demonstration of what he actually delivers when he's talking and when somebody's asking real questions and he's giving real answers. The contrast between President Trump and the depth that he will go to in answering a question, and Kamala Harris, who just cannot get beneath
with anecdotes, like real life stuff
right.
that he did in the first 4 years.
And not just the first 4 years, but his entire career.
Yeah.
Like, especially on issues of the domestic economy. These are arguments Donald Trump's been making since the 1980s.
Yeah.
About the hollowing out of the American manufacturing sector. and foreign competition. Like, this is ground he's very willing to fight on because he comes prepared.
And you can only do it as a candidate this stage in the election if you feel pretty good about where you're at.
Right.
Because you're not hedging against what you assume everybody dislikes. Like, he's just him. He's just doing what he's doing. I particularly liked it when he said to the guy, "You must feel terrible about dedicating your life to something and being wrong about all of it." Yeah. I mean, that is just such a classic Trump blast. It's so good. Reminder to all of you, a special third show, as you've now become accustomed to over the last couple of weeks, will air live at Friday at 8.
Yeah.
Friday at 8.
8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube.
Yeah, we're going to summarize the week. We'll give you some polls and predictions. We're going to have a little fun along the way. Probably a cocktail. Probably a cocktail.
Great
right?
idea.
Maybe a few.
Maybe a few cocktails.
I mean, after a long week, you've earned it.
Yeah, you earned it. So sit back and relax and enjoy with the fellas. Huh?
Yeah.
Let's do that. So anyway, you got that coming for you too. Hardest working men in show business.
Yep.
That's right.
And remember, the only way you'll see that, like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. You don't want to miss them.
Smug.
You
That's
don't want to miss
just
them.
like good work there.
Dude, we are working today.
Yeah.
Everyone's on the same wavelength.
Just
Yeah.
tossing it around the infield.
Look at this, huh? I got around the horn. I love it. All right, so let's start with Kamala. We talked a little bit about how things aren't going great. The standard for Kamala Harris throughout her entire political career is that anytime you give her a microphone, the tendency for bad things to happen follows. It turns out when you give her a microphone a lot, bad things happen a lot. And so this week she was talking about, I don't even know what, but check out this clip.
There's this whole, I talked with somebody once who said, if you just look at where the stars are in the sky, don't look at them as just random things. If you just look at them as points, look at the constellation, what does it show you? So you just outlined it, Roland. What does it show you?
So,
If I look puzzled, it's because I am.
the question was about like a very leading question about how Donald Trump has been bagging on inner cities, which breaking news to everybody listening, they're not going very well.
No.
Like crime's terrible.
Past few years have been very tough.
The progressive liberal management of all of the things in cities has not gone terrifically over the last 5 years, shall we say. But what she's talking about is the stars and how they relate to that. Does that make sense?
Trump is
you guys
like,
get that? Follow that?
I want to make it better. And she's like, let's look to the stars.
Yeah.
Like she's Copernicus. I mean, get out of here. Can you imagine that woman being president of the United States? Nobody would take her seriously.
Thanks, Galileo.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like if I go to a drugstore in any major city in this country, the deodorant is locked behind a cage. The razors are locked behind a cage. It didn't used to be like that just 4 years ago. And so he asks, like, oh, Trump says things are tough in cities. What is your thoughts? And she's like, so think about the stars. It's like,
But that she does this classic thing in every one of her, where she's got like complete nonsense coming out of her mouth that sort of pieces together in sentences and paragraphs where the words, the adjectives, and the verbs don't all fit together. But then she looks at you and gives you this knowing head nod, as though she said something totally
that's the
profound.
thing. Like in her mind, she's wise, but everyone who's hearing her is like, is she an idiot?
You're like, what
because,
are you
she
talking
is.
about, lady?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, but I mean, the alternative is Kamala Harris, who isn't exactly a gifted communicator, having to defend urban policies in the United
of which she
States.
played a substantial
Right,
role.
which she obviously can't, and the Democratic Party knows that they can't defend the record on that. So
Maybe talk about the stars.
it's a
Maybe it's not as dumb as we thought.
well, I mean, like the whole.
What else is she going to do?
I mean, the whole point of the leading question, I guess, was to basically call Donald Trump a racist for noticing that our cities are falling apart.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's either like make him a racist or call him a threat to democracy. That really is the only pivot.
That's all she's got.
Well, it's because it's become such like a dead beaten horse. Like she has to find new ways to get back to that.
I know that when I try to evaluate racism in society, I look to the stars.
Here's the thing. Like, this is one issue I would take with what you said, Duncan. That's not the only pivot. What she could say is things aren't going as well as they should, and I have concerns that stem from bad management of X, Y, and Z. I've made these concerns very clear to President Joe Biden.
Right, but all of that
he hasn't fixed it.
Yeah.
all of that
requires her being a competent communicator, and she's not.
In some knowledge of what's actually happening.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the Bill Clinton playbook.
Yeah.
Right.
The I Feel Your Pain playbook.
Totally.
Of
Right.
which she has absolutely never opened the first page of that sucker. The Feel
Right.
Your Pain thing's like, everything's going great. I did everything with Joe Biden. Oh, wait, you want change? I just showed up here. I've come from a small town and middle class family.
Like, what does
That's
it
all
tell
she's
you?
got.
So back to the point I made up top. Like, what does it tell you about the Kamala Harris's campaign's internal polling?
Yeah.
That they know the risk anytime they put her in front of a camera is constellations and stars when we're talking about crime in inner cities. Like, that she is that stupid, and they still they think it's worth to take that risk because they need to get her out there in order to have a chance to win. Like,
Yeah.
that's a real Hobson's choice.
Yeah.
Well, it totally is, but like it breaks down even more granularly in that you saw Barack Obama go out at the end of last week and sort of browbeat black men to say, like, look, I know it's misogyny, and you got to get over that. All these guys are like, dude, it's my paycheck.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
Like,
I don't
actually,
know
things have
anything.
been pretty terrible.
But like the answer to that, which was so telling to me, when you have a campaign where there's this moment that's like circulated widely, everybody's looking at, it's Barack Obama. He's got a huge constituency. People watch these kind of things. And that happens on a Friday. And then by Monday morning, you release a black man's economic proposal that basically amounts to like legalizing drugs and reparations. Like, that is so absurd
Yeah.
and so ridiculous at any point. But with 20 days left in the election, like, what? You have not made a case to a core constituency of your party about anything other than just slapping a couple of bullet points on a piece of paper and rolling it out and pretending like everybody cares about legalizing drugs and like freebies.
Right.
Like, how condescending.
And then
Right.
also, she sends out this tweet where she was like, I will give black men like $100,000 each to start a business. And immediately you see lawyers and their replies being like, actually, that's illegal. You can't really do that. You can't just hand money based on race.
But at least that's a big picture idea. Like, of course, it would not,
Well, they tried it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember this, but in this first like stimulus package
Right.
that they had, they did it for black farmers. And of course, it was thrown out of court in like a wink of an eye because if you're delegating money from a federal government exclusively to the race of an individual, like it turns out we got a lot of systems in place to try to prevent that sort of thing. Our country would have been in a real bad spot if we
Right.
didn't have those.
Very hard earned.
You know what I mean? Very hard earned. Yeah, talk to civil rights leaders about why those protections are in place. So they tried it before, but now she's like rolling all that. Like, never mind the fact that was like laughed out of court 8 months ago. She's got a new plan.
Yeah.
This time it's going to be the business owner, not just the farmer. That didn't work out. And truth be told, we don't really care about plow ground anyway in this campaign, obviously. I mean, it's just, it's just so bad. But she's not done. She's doing tons of interviews. Look at this one, clip 2.
But for some reason, the narrative is that the economy does better under Republicans. Why do people believe that, and why don't Democrats push back on that narrative more?
Well, I think that part of the issue is that Democrats probably talk about it more in terms of what we are doing for people rather than the economy, when in fact, when you do for people, the economy grows.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
What? what
We
does
talk
that
about
even
do
mean?
for people.
what?
More Kamala wisdom.
What
like,
does that even mean? People have actual practical problems, and she has not said one practical thing that she would do to fix them. It's why she's struggling. Even Democrats were like, man, this is a breath of fresh air. At least she's not Joe Biden. I really want to get excited about voting for my candidate over the summer. And then little by little, they heard what she had to say, and they're like, wait a minute. I'm kind of embarrassed to tell people I support her.
yeah.
And like, she's done it to herself.
Yeah.
They have done this to themselves.
Yeah.
I think we talk about it in terms of helping people, and people don't like that. What they like is stock tickers.
Yeah.
I mean, what an idiot!
That's such a dumb answer.
I mean, I got to say, like, if she somehow does become president, I think it should be a rule that she's not allowed in front of a microphone while the New York Stock Exchange is trading.
Oh, that's
Like,
fair.
that could be devastating for her economy.
That is fair. Yeah. Maybe never allowed in front of a microphone, period. It doesn't get better. But, like, again, we talked about this last week. They run their course with the interviews with her, and like nothing goes well. You know, and they're like, what else we got in the bag? Well, I guess we got to give old Tim Walz another shot.
Yes.
Right? Clip 3, please, Spaghetts.
And Senator Vance, he became a media darling. He wrote a book about the place he grew up, but the premise was trashing that place where he grew up rather than lifting it up. This guy's a venture capitalist cosplaying like he's a cowboy or something. I don't even know what a venture capitalist does most of the time.
We know, Tim.
This is my favorite Smug bit. Like, what's his answer?
Oh, well, I'm just dumb, guy. I'm just dumb. And for the American people who have suffered through the past few years, being told by someone who wants to be in a leadership position that I'm dumb is not very confidence-inducing.
Like, can you believe this guy? He went to Yale and he wrote a New York Times bestseller. You know? What a loser.
What a loser.
And also, like...
Unlike me, famous knucklehead Tim Walz.
Yeah, and also renowned leftist Ron Howard made a movie out of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
that does bother me is when Walz tries playing that thing where he's like, oh, you know, J.D. Vance is cosplaying as... Dude, J.D. Vance is cosplaying as nothing. If you understand where he came from, having absolutely nothing, and then making something of himself, we saw at the convention... I actually got to, when I was in JD's box at the convention, I got to sit right behind his mother.
Nice
When
flex.
he says that he left them all
that's
behind.
Good flex.
When he says he left them all behind. His mother's in recovery, and he said there on stage, he was like, I hope, you know, once we're elected to the White House, we can celebrate like her 5-year anniversary of sobriety in the White House. He left no one behind, and everything he has done, whether it's getting elected to the Senate, whether it's bringing his family with him, is about the community he came from. Tim Walz let Minnesota burn. You can't talk about anyone cosplaying as where they're from or what they did for the community when you let your state burn.
Mm-hmm.
I do love the flex, though.
Yeah, it was a good flex.
Nice.
That was,
It was very gracious.
You
of him
know,
to
I
host
was
me.
talking foreign policy with Henry Kissinger. the other day. He happened to said to me, he says,
What do you think about this new proposal for an agreement with China?
I've been long concerned about nuclear arms treaties. So anyway, look, he's not working out either. I mean, that's just, he's got nothing to say on that. Like, first of all, misrepresenting, as you said, JD, but then, like, the idea that a vice president of the United States doesn't know what a venture capital is. Like, look, you're a random voter. If you don't know it, I don't blame you. But, like, it's a pretty important part of the economy not to know what it does. You know, and, like, it seems like it's relevant when you're doing things like, I don't know, setting tax rates.
Yeah, yeah. Might need to know about that.
Like, if you just washed venture capital out because you didn't understand what it was, like, good luck in Main Street. Good luck in Main Street.
It's also dishonest because they've raised more money than any campaign in the history of this country, and a lot of that money came from left-wing venture capital.
Yeah,
right.
totally
He
right.
knows exactly who they are when they come to him and ask him for something like, I don't know, an EV mandate,
Yeah,
and he does it.
yeah.
And Tim Walz is a liar from start to finish. He's an idiot, but he's also a liar.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So coming up, we'll have a state of the race. Nate Silver is out with his latest prediction, and betting odds have shifted pretty dramatically. We're going to talk about all of that right after this.
Folks, let me tell you about my friends at Americans for Prosperity, America's largest grassroots organization. Americans for Prosperity is out there every day fighting for you. Their goal? Reignite the American dream. AFP's priorities are simple: secure the border, end inflation, make energy more affordable. And AFP gets results the old-fashioned way, through grassroots activism. They bring together like-minded conservatives, turning them into a grassroots army, and defeating the left's terrible big government agenda in the states and in Washington. And that's where you come in. With the media, celebrities, and universities stacked against us, it's the grassroots that will help us win. So please find an Americans for Prosperity chapter in your state and get in the fight. Go to americansforprosperity.org.
Well, as we do on Thursdays, we like to give you a little update on where things stand here in the world of politics, what you can come to expect. None of these things are determinative, but they are interesting in terms of trends and whatnot. One of the things that we always go to is Nate Silver. Does a bunch of collecting of different numbers, different polling, and then puts, like a prognostication model together to see where things are at. If we can pull up graphic 1, please, from Nate Silver, you can look at the red line being Trump, the blue line being Harris. There are some dates on top. If you can't see it on the YouTube, I can tell you, if you're an audio-only listener, what to look at. You had a big Trump lead, and then you went all of a sudden into the change of candidates.
Mm-hmm.
And the change of candidates, obviously, the spread brought out a Kamala Harris lead that lasted through the convention all the way into, as we predicted, basically Labor Day, where people start tuning in. Now, Trump had a big lead, and this is what we talked about a little bit with the debate. If we had one disappointment in the Trump-Harris debate, as unfairly as that was moderated, and ridiculously as that was moderated, we thought at that point the only question was whether Trump could put her out of her misery, and that clearly didn't happen.
Yeah.
And what happened afterwards was a pretty significant slide by the Trump campaign, a regaining of the lead by the Kamala Harris campaign, right up until J.D. Vance took the stage against Tim Walz. And that has then had a pretty precipitous slide here over the last 2-3 weeks for the Harris campaign. Trump has now come back. It is a dead even deal.
Yep.
50-50. Which tells you, look, we look at these things instead of like what the 50-50 says, we look at these things in terms of trend lines.
Yeah.
That's a trend line I like.
I think also, though, I think all of those markers that you mentioned are important, and I think they've informed all of this. But I think the other one is, I think for about 80% of the time since Kamala's been in this race, she's been an empty vessel.
Yeah.
They sort of purposely hid her away and didn't want to talk about her policy positions. Her most unpopular one, she did a 180 on, for good reason. And so I think this trend line also is reflective of just more Americans actually knowing what she stood for and who she is.
Well,
right?
she started to do interviews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, so that's the backdrop to this whole thing.
Yep. I totally agree with that. Here's a second piece of analysis. This is from the Poly Market, which graphic A, if you wouldn't mind putting that up, Spaghettis. So what they do is basically it's betting odds. Mm-hmm. And so this changes, and it's obviously not statistically in and of itself relevant to the odds of the election, but you see who people all of a sudden are putting money on in betting for or against a winner. This is the highest margin that Donald Trump has had since Kamala Harris has been the nominee on the Democratic side. He's up to 59.5 on Poly Market. That's a big number. Of course, it's important to remember this is what we're looking at, an electoral college prediction, right? So this is what determines presidency. It's not a national popular vote or anything like that, but it's interesting. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, and this is where I think this gets super interesting. You've seen a bunch of stories that came out that we've covered here in the program about Joe Biden and about Kamala Harris and the teams not getting along well together. And look, external consumption of that is next to zero. Like voters, it doesn't really matter. What it is the psychology of a campaign. And the reason we bring it up is because you don't start trying to trash or hedge bets or try to cast blame internally when you're winning because everybody's along for the big win.
Yep.
Yeah.
But as soon as you feel like it's starting to slip, you certainly don't, in this slippery game, with these trashy people, you don't want to be holding the bag for a loss.
Yeah. In game theory, we call this the prisoner's dilemma. Yeah. It's like whoever rats first is going to get a better deal.
That's really good. Yeah.
So enter yesterday's story in Politico, Kamala's Pennsylvania problem. I'll just read a couple and then get your reaction to some of this. Top Democrats in Pennsylvania are worried Vice President Kamala Harris's operation is being poorly run in the nation's biggest battleground state. They say some Harris aides lack relationships with key party figures, particularly in Philadelphia and its suburbs. They complain that they've been left out of events and surrogates haven't been deployed effectively. And they've urged Harris staff in private meetings to do more to turn out people of color. So this is where it gets fucking awesome. Some are even pointing fingers at Harris, Pennsylvania campaign manager Nikki Lou.
Come on.
Who they say lacks deep knowledge of Philadelphia, where vice president must do well to drive up voters in order to win. This is fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Like any stat, like you've got a presidential nominee, you've got a vice presidential nominee, you've got a campaign manager, nobody remembers her name, but she exists. And then you've got like 100 Democratic Illuminati that are all sort of like attached to this campaign at one point or another. But now there's a political story about Nikki Lou.
Yeah,
Yep.
the power behind the throne.
Poor-
The one letting us all down.
If it wasn't for that goddamn Nikki Lou, everything would be fine.
The best is like Nikki wakes up, she takes a scan of Politico, and she's like, "Wait, it's my fault."
She's what? She's like loading rebar into the back of a pickup, and
Yeah.
then she reads Politico, and she's like, "Wait, what?"
And that's the thing. It's like you said, like winning campaigns don't have this problem because everyone's in a good mood. They're like, yeah, I'm going to get a piece of the credit for winning this. But when you have the opposite situation, which is what's going on right now with Kamala's campaign, where people are trying to throw each other under the bus ahead of the big loss. So they're like, hey, look, we already got Nikki Lou on the line for us
It's
losing
Nikki Lou,
Pennsylvania.
that rat.
Yeah.
And bro, there are different levels of throwing people under the bus. There's like background where you fire off a quote and you see nobody's name is associated. These people are doing it on the record.
Yeah.
The lead quote in the story, "I have concerns about Nikki Lou," said Ryan Boyer, who's a local guy. He said, "I don't think she understands Philadelphia."
But to understand more about the manufacturing process to this, so typically what happens when you're in a campaign, particularly state-based, critical state, but state-based, is that when the media calls you, there is one lesson that everybody teaches you at the beginning of the campaign. Nobody, and I mean nobody, speaks to the media unless you're authorized by the campaign. Or you're fired the first time your name appears in print. Every campaign in history has done this. I've been a part of some of them where that has you have to take action on, right? What they have here is 20 sources. Listen to this. For some Pennsylvania Democratic officials, party leaders, and allies, 20 of whom spoke to Politico for this article, they're anxious the in-state operation has set them back. So you have to have authorization. Like, maybe there's one or two wild cards out there. Like maybe this dude, the local guy, is like, fuck it, I'm just going to speak my mind. But to have 20 people involved in the campaign all speak to Politico about poor Nikki Lou who?
Yeah, if you're and here's the thing: if you're attacking Nikki Lou, you're not knocking doors.
That's it.
If you're like texting about how much you hate these people on the campaign, you're not asking anybody to vote, and that might be one of the reasons why early vote for Democrats in Pennsylvania isn't looking as good. Ryan Godursky, who's a guy that we follow, he tweeted something this morning showing that the Democrats are underperforming their early vote in Pennsylvania at this point by 900,000 votes.
Wow.
And maybe, just maybe, it has something to do with the fact that they're all just attacking each other. Let me read you a quote from another Dem in Pennsylvania who described Lou as AWOL, and she empowers a culture in the campaign that has left elected officials feeling unengaged and disrespected.
Nikki! Nikki Lou!
I feel like they could have solved this whole problem by just picking Josh Shapiro, but instead,
It's not his fault.
Nikki Lou.
It's Nikki Lou. Nikki Lou is the one to blame.
And right before we recorded, I also saw there's this report that the Harris campaign has pulled ads from Wisconsin, buys there, and they're trying to redeploy them in Pennsylvania.
To Philadelphia.
Which, number one, if we are like 2.5 weeks from Election Day and now you're scrambling and moving buys, that doesn't seem like a well-oiled machine. And second, how much inventory is even left in Pennsylvania to be able to buy at this point?
No.
There's like so many contested races
Not at a good
there.
rate. Not at a good
No,
rate.
You make a good point, and it's echoed by another Democrat in Pennsylvania who says, we have surrogates in this area that have tremendous credibility, and Nikki Lou was slow to get to them.
Oh, that damn Nikki Lou.
They've been slighted.
I can't believe the audacity.
I love their bruised egos, all these local elected officials. What I wonder in this story, though, because I feel like every cycle with every Democratic presidential campaign, like you eventually get an October story in some urban area where they need to do really well, where so-and-so is worried about Latino turnout or black turnout or whatever. You always get that story of everyone. Is like they didn't hire the right door knocking firm.
Yeah,
And
no,
you know what I mean. Like
what they're
somebody
really
needs to be
saying.
greased.
What they're really saying is the street money is pretty thin around.
Yeah, you need that walk-around money.
The street money's getting really thin around.
You know who's worried about Latino turnout? Mariel Joy Cornblith Martin. who said that she didn't have access to the demographics and there's no infrastructure plan or events to engage the Latino community.
What was her name again?
Mariel Joy Cornblith Martin.
Jesus.
She's got a lot. She's a mouthful. Maybe they just couldn't pronounce her name. Like, there was just a lot for everybody to remember. That's why she wasn't on the call list.
Apparently, she quit in August, and she wrote a scathing memo to the Kamala
About Nikki
campaign.
Lou?
Well, it doesn't say that Nikki was the target of this one. It's a little... It may have been. It just doesn't say here.
Well, she wears it nevertheless.
Yeah.
It's framed around Nikki.
Everyone knows Nikki Lou.
Yeah, Nikki Lou is the problem here. But, I mean, look, I've seen polling this morning. Wisconsin doesn't look good either.
No.
But as we talked about, you remember, this is why you tune into the Variety program. We said that there is no path to 270 for President Trump without Georgia and North Carolina. We've said that repeatedly. Both are looking, fortunately, pretty good for President Trump. We also said there is no path for a Democratic 270 without Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And they know that, too. Everybody's talking about all this other stuff and all these things, these backdoor ways to get to 270. If they lose Pennsylvania, they can't get home. Mm-hmm. They can't get home. And they know that. That's why they're freaking out, moving money out of Milwaukee. I mean, I hate to tell you, Trump could lose Pennsylvania. If he wins Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Arizona, it's 272.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, careful where you're moving your money.
Right. Yeah. And like, in all likelihood, if you're worried about Pennsylvania, you're already losing in Wisconsin just on the demographics and how the vote breaks out in those states. So it's like...
Well, Nikki Lou is surely to blame in Milwaukee as well, Michael.
Right.
And Nikki, if you're listening, don't let them get away with this.
Come on the program.
If I were you, I would cancel all ad buys in Pennsylvania. You're like, you're going to take Nikki out? Yeah, right. I'm going to take you out.
Yeah.
You know what
Drop all the ad buys, tell all your door knockers to stay home. Teach them a lesson.
You know what the most hilarious part about this is knowing like how these campaigns work? I guarantee the first time Nikki Lou sees any of the television ads is like at her home on television.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, she probably doesn't see daylight.
They're like, you're the campaign manager, Nikki Lou. Right. You're responsible for us losing. She's like, I just watch the news. That's the only way I know what's going on. Nikki Lou. Nikki Lou who? She's to blame. Anyway, all your Democrats can write your thank you notes to Nikki Lou. So it brings us to our question of the day. We always like to ask one. You got to like and subscribe to the YouTube to get them read, and there have been great ones lately. Mm-hmm. Really appreciate it. We read all of them. This one is, how you feeling about the race? I mean, you can tell based upon the opening segments of this. Today it feels pretty good. There's a real roller coaster this time of year in October, though, and don't let the polls kind of screw with your viewpoint. You're talking to your friends and neighbors. I'd be interested. How are you feeling? We going to win this in your community? Send it on in. We will read all of that, and then we will read your comments from last Tuesday's question, which was, is the appeal to men going to work?
Yeah.
You had some thoughts. I can't wait to read them. After this.
Cyber attacks are on the rise, with corporate megastores falling victim to data breaches that expose your private information. Now these same megastores are lobbying D.C. politicians to pass the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill will leave you even more vulnerable to credit card cyber attacks while Walmart and Target pocket billions in additional profit. Don't let them get away with it. Tell Congress to guard your card because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
Okay, your comments from Tuesday. Is this appeal to men going to work? We had some thoughts on the Variety program on Tuesday, as did you. And to do that, we always start with a voice.
Okay, this first one comes from Corrine Russell, and Corrine writes, I'm surprised Kamala the Chameleon didn't use one of her many accents and star in her own TikTok video by throwing on a flannel shirt and trying her best John Wayne impression. Man, I love
That's
Corrine.
pretty good.
I was born and raised in Montana, and none of these ridiculous ads are going to sway the demographic she's foolishly trying to reach. Love the show, Corinne Russell. P.S. Thought I'd share a pic of an elk I shot in Wyoming. I used a rifle, not a cup of Starbucks.
That's so good.
Wow.
That's a great picture.
That is a great picture. God, that's a good-looking elk,
Just
too.
a monster.
It really is.
Absolute dragon she slayed there.
Excellent. All right, Dunks, what else do we got here?
This comment's from Kyle Fisher. Kyle writes, what the Kamala campaign doesn't understand and actually despises is the fact that men want the opportunity to have a family, the ability to provide for their family, protect their family, and hand a better country to their children. And before any of this, we are tired of being talked down to and caricatured. Also, they just want to enjoy life. Whiskey, drinking, hunting, etc. is at most tertiary to all the above. Leftism is a disease for families and the country.
Well said, Kyle. Well said. God, it just summarizes. Our listeners are the best.
They
Can't
are.
beat them.
Absolutely the best. All right, Smug, what do we got?
Comment 3 is from Ainsley Pate. They write, I don't think anyone other than the far left soy boys buy the new Harris Falls, quote, manly content. Trump campaign has done a great job reaching out to men, especially young first-time voters. That is a great point. However, I think they should take the win for the men and spend time closing weeks trying to make up some ground with suburban women. He should be talking safety and the economy for families every minute of the day. We know that moms are very concerned about prices, crime, and immigration. A clear, strong closing message from Trump to moms, in contrast to Kamala's incomprehensible platitudes, could clinch the win. And that's why I think it was really good for him to do that town hall. That's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's basically, that's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's speaking right to all of this, and she's talking about streetlights and bicycles.
Yeah.
It's so good. All right. So thank you for your comments. As always, you got to like and subscribe. Get them in. We read all of them. Can't wait to get to yours next week. We want to thank our sponsor, Lumen. It's a great sponsor. These guys have put together a hell of a product. Smug, I know you're a big consumer of this.
Yeah. So Lumen is basically, it's a device. It's a small little thing. They even give you a travel case if you buy it. And all you have to do is every morning, you wake up, breathe into this thing, and it'll tell you, oh, okay, right now your body is burning carbohydrates or it's burning fat. And it makes all the decisions for you. It tells you, oh, you should have this for lunch or you should have this for dinner. It's not like, I have a lot of these smart devices. I got the rings. I got the
Yeah, you're kitted out.
Yeah. And they all will give you information like, the Whoop will tell you, okay, your HRV is so-and-so today. And while that's great, it's like, I can't tell you what HRV, how it matters or anything. Lumen tells me exactly what to do. I don't have to be like, understand what HRV is or anything. Lumen just does it for me.
You don't have to be a scientist because they have scientists.
They do. It's developed by a PhD, so you know that you can rely on the data they give you on a daily basis.
That's really good.
How do I get the scientist to program my Lumen so it allows me to have chicken wings when I watch football? Because that's very important for me. Like, that's my cheat day.
My Lumen just says drink as much bourbon this time of year as you can. It does not say that because it does not lie to you. But I will tell you, if you want to take the next step in improving your health, you go to lumen.me/ruthless, and that's 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/ruthless for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, as always, to Lumen for sponsoring this episode. All right. Ready for some variety, fellas?
Yes.
Always.
So good. This first one almost can't be made up. The Associated Press. From the Associated Press. Mud, Beer, and Cash. Annual Wife Carrying Championship attracts competitive couples to Maine. Do we have a clip of this one, Spigettes? Can we play that? So for our audio-only listener, what you're watching is men going through what appears to be an obstacle course with their wives somehow attached to them, and they do it in different ways. Yeah. These people seem to have a strategy behind it where they've got her basically ass up over the back of his head.
Yeah.
This is very funny.
So legs over the shoulders.
That is interesting. So, like, you saw some do the approach of just, like, throwing over one shoulder. One with legs over both, so they got both to just, like, run and crawl over stuff.
More than 30 couples competed in the North American Wife Carrying Championship, a 278-yard race during which contestants splashed through water, leap over logs, trudge through mud, all while carrying their partners like sacks of potatoes. The sport's origin story isn't exactly politically correct. It's based in 19th century Finnish legend involving a man known as Ronkanen the Robber, whose gang was known to pillage villages and carry the women away.
What a tradition to carry on.
In honor of Ronkanen the Wife Stealer.
The champion leaves with the weight of the wife in beer.
Okay, now you got my attention.
Oh, boy.
And 5 times the wife's weight in cash. So here's the other thing.
Wait a
They
minute.
actually weigh the wife? Ooh,
Yeah.
can
And
you
so, like,
imagine?
part of your strategy is like, maybe
You wanna fatten up your wife
That's
a
the
little
thing.
bit.
Ahead of this,
Like, because I was thinking, though, when we were playing the clip, I was like, if you were hell-bent on participating in this, you'd be like, you got to watch your weight, honey.
Yeah,
Like, we got a wife carrying contest to win. But, like, if they pay you exclusively on how much your wife weighs, like, you're lifting weights, you're getting ready for this thing, but you want her to put on some LBs, don't you?
Well, especially if you win. I mean, a dollar bill is not very heavy. So I just think of how much that weighs, like, as compared to a person. You get 2x the weight of cash.
Five times.
5 times.
5 times?
5 times
Yeah.
the wife's weight in cash.
And it can all go towards your back surgery you'll need. You know?
Yeah. Well, it might be worth it because you also get the weight of the wife in beer.
Yeah. Well, then
So-
that's part of your recovery.
and this
That's
is
part of
amazing.
the-
It says the winning wife is put on one side of a seesaw-like scale that organizers balance out on the other side with cases of beer.
This
That's
is-
nice.
dude-
I like that they made it funny. It's like
amazing.
It's like how Looney Tunes would weigh someone.
Lee, you need to contact the organizers of this, and you need to see if the Ruthless Variety Program can do the play-by-play, a live play-by-play. It sounds like it just went happen, so maybe it's next year. But I can't think of anything we would rather do than do a play-by-play.
sounds like a great
of this
competition.
situation.
It would be very funny.
Oh my God, it would be so good, and you could have like the full Jim Nance on it too.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so good. All right, another one. This is pretty good. A cop was swallowed by a giant inflatable pumpkin. You know how like all your neighbors, they put out these like big inflatable
Yeah, it's getting out of
Halloween
hand.
things. It's getting a little out of hand.
No, I support it.
No, I like it.
Yeah.
You do?
Well, I mean,
I'm okay with
I guess
some
I wouldn't
pumpkins
say
and
I
stuff.
love it, but like, so our 5-year-old Joey's getting like super into Halloween this year.
Yeah.
He really, I think feel like my son's a little goth, honestly. You know?
He
Like,
likes the dark.
Yeah, no, like seriously, like I think he probably loves like Good Charlotte and stuff like that. You know, I'm just waiting for him to grow out his bangs and dye his hair black. But no, he's a really like positive kid and stuff, but he just really loves Halloween and he loves Nightmare Before Christmas. So yeah, which is actually kind of
It's scary.
right?
Yeah.
But he loves it.
Wow.
So
okay.
so we got a Jack Skellington inflatable.
Yeah.
And the arms move.
Oh,
Nice.
Okay, so that's a big hit on the home front.
Well, also Jack Skellington has a dog, Zero, this like white ghost dog.
Also out in the yard?
He's out in the yard too.
So you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I support it.
According to Fox 8, and we'll play the clip in a minute, Bay Village police officers responded to an unexpected call early Monday. A rogue Halloween decoration had struck the roadway. Let's see this.
Oh, that's
my
a
God.
decoration?
Look at the
that's-
size of that thing.
It's just a little bit too big.
It's a little much.
It is an inflatable pumpkin that's taking up the entirety of a road.
Yeah, but that's from like a harvest festival. That's not from anyone's front yard, right?
You don't
say
think
it
you don't
is?
think there was some dad who
Watch
came
him,
Oh my
watch this guy.
God!
Oh.
He's just swallowed whole.
The cop went to try to move it, and all of a sudden he's in the jack-o'-lantern.
That's like how I lose my 2-year-old in a bounce house.
Yeah, no, this is, and I don't think there's any getting out. He finally got out
He
of
got
it.
out.
But now he knows the danger, and this thing's blowing around.
A car
There's not
just
much
hit
he
it.
can do.
A car just hit
A car hit it.
That's the thing is, I would drive right through it. That seems like a fun time.
Yeah.
You know?
Did
It's
anybody-
going to blow up.
Did anybody think to maybe pop the thing?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, they're trying to be thoughtful and property and such. At one point, as the officer tried to run the decoration off the road, it went on top of him. With the help of backup officers, it was returned to its owner. So it was an owner. Luckily, no officers were harmed during the event.
They're at least
That thing
they're
is pretty enormous.
Here's the
not-
thing. If you're going to put like a skyscraper-sized yard decoration up that's full of air, anchor that thing.
Yeah.
I don't want that thing. Imagine if it's on your roof. You know?
I just love seeing that thing just.
Look at it blowing
Imagine
around.
that cop. Think about how many times his buddies at the office have been playing this over and
Just
over again.
busting his balls.
Yeah. No, you're never hearing the end of it.
Never.
And at what point are you clear to open fire if you're in
Yeah, I
that
was just
thing?
going to say, shot fired,
Yeah.
pumpkin down.
Wasn't me.
You know, somebody in the office is going to FOIA his body cam.
Oh, for sure. It'll be just going around the office email for weeks.
Yeah.
Gotta love it. All right, so with all of that, we got to get to our special guest, guy that we just absolutely love here in the Variety Program, Senator Tom Cotton. I want to welcome back to the program our very first guest of the program. He's been back several times since, including our first live show. You'll recognize him from just about everywhere. Senator Tom Cotton. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. First and best, right?
First and best, no question.
I don't do conservative media much these days. I'm only on Sunday shows now.
Well, that's the
we've
thing.
noticed.
Is everybody just decided like you're the one that just does the hand-to-hand combat?
So, I largely stopped doing Sunday shows in the Trump era. I used to do them a lot. I used to do CNN a lot. Even did Morning Joe when I was new. But so many of these libs in the media just kind of lost their mind during the Trump era, and I just didn't view it as a very productive use of my
You
time.
think like screaming into the void didn't make a ton of...
better to like spend time with my kids or go to church or something. And as some of you know, the way the timing works, these Sunday shows are starting to probe, availability, Tuesday, Wednesday of a given week. And I think my staff long ago just stopped even bringing it to me.
Right.
And in early May this year, they said, we know that you generally, don't want to do these shows, but we just think it's a really good issue environment. This is early May when all the little Gazas had broken out on campus everywhere.
Yeah, little Gazas.
And Biden had imposed the arms embargo on Israel. Well, if you recall, it was I think it was with Jonathan Karl.
Yes, I remember it well.
I used that phrase. I used it a few times. He said, "You call them little Gaza. It's like you're mocking them." And I said, "I am mocking them." They deserve our contempt, but they also deserve our mockery. Have you seen they're out there with their N95 masks on outside and asking for gluten-free food from Uber Eats? They totally deserve mockery.
Totally.
But anyway, so President Trump saw that and encouraged me to keep doing it, and I said I'd be happy to pitch in if it would help the campaign. So
you've been carrying
working with the campaign.
Carrying some water, because I feel like every time I turn, almost every Sunday, you get clips and highlights or whatever. But it's not just Sundays; it's almost everywhere. I see you just annihilating some journalists.
Well, and I will say, I probably. I'll keep doing them after campaign. I'm not going to do it every weekend.
I like it.
The way I have for the last 5 months for the Trump campaign as a surrogate for them. But one thing I have realized is, I'll do a Sunday show and then I'll be on the trail somewhere. And, we might be in rural Montana with Tim Sheehy, and you're shaking hands with a bunch of farmers whose hands are wind chapped and say, "I love seeing you on Meet the Press yesterday."
Yeah, you're like, no way, really?
And I doubt that many of them were sitting up on Sunday morning, probably out there very early, watching all of Meet the Press. But what they see are the clips that circulate on social media. Mm-hmm.
Well, you have a tendency to go viral.
So even though the ratings for these Sunday shows may not be the best in Arkansas, probably reach a lot of Arkansans on social media. So probably still worth doing to get the word out about the president's campaign, and then after this election, what the Republican majority is up to in the United States Congress and what President Trump is doing.
Well, look, you've been working hard on all of this stuff. I know you've been traveling the country. I think you just got back from Wisconsin. You mentioned you were out in Montana. Senate majority, how are we looking here?
I think we're looking pretty good. I was out in Wisconsin earlier this week with Eric Hovde. The Democrats are obviously panicking about that race. They sent up a lot of bat signals in the media to try to get their donors to come and bail out Tammy Baldwin, who has really no profile at all in Wisconsin. None. I'm not even aware of what she does really in the Senate. There are lots of Democrats who I could tell you, "Oh yeah, I know what he's doing," because it's no good. And it's not bad for the country, but at least I know what they stand for, and even more to the point, what they think they stand for, and what they think. These are the issues that I want my voters to know.
Or vaguely where their office is in the building.
I'm still kind of mystified by what Tammy Baldwin thinks her voters know about what she does in the Senate. And Eric Hovde is a great candidate, very hardworking, very sincere, genuine, loves the country, loves Wisconsinites. And I think we got a great chance to win. Again, you can just see from what the Democrats are saying about that race and doing. This weekend I'll be up in Pennsylvania with Dave McCormick. Yeah, nice. And next week I'll be down in Florida with Rick Scott, one of the only pickup opportunities the Democrats fantasize about. I don't think that either he or Ted Cruz, the other main one, are going to have much trouble winning. But the Democrats are obviously spending a lot of money there.
Well, they're trying to figure out a way to the majority, right?
Yeah. Well, I think they're trying to figure out a backdoor majority, drawing an inside, straight or something.
Right.
And in the end, I just don't see that happening. President Trump is going to win those states by high single digits. He may win Florida by double digits. And it's just very hard to imagine someone who's going to vote for Donald Trump in Florida or Texas and then not also vote for Rick Scott and Ted Cruz, because their voters the president's voters know that Ted and Rick are strong supporters of the president and that he needs a majority in the Senate if he wants to effectively govern. And they're running strong campaigns. They've been active from the very beginning. They haven't taken it lightly from the very beginning. They've known, looking at this Senate map this year, that the Democrats could only target a couple potential places.
Yeah, I mean, a Republican incumbent sticks out like a sore thumb in this map.
Towards it, I'd already, as you mentioned earlier, last month I was in Montana, I was in Nevada. We've got great candidates out there as well. I'm going to get to most of these states probably in the last 9 days or so. I'll just kind of hit the road nonstop, go all around the country. I was there with Mike Rogers last week as well.
Oh, yeah.
Strong. Mike Rogers is strong. You can see it too from Alyssa Slotkin and Kamala Harris running like scalded dogs from their electric vehicle mandate position.
Yeah, right.
We would never mandate electric vehicles. Like, really, because Kamala, I was there in 2019 when you introduced a bill called the Zero Emission Vehicle Act that says there'd be no more gas-powered cars. So that sounds like a mandate to me.
Isn't it jarring? It's jarring. I mean, look, when Democrats get into trouble because they disavow everything that they've ever done.
And they disavow each other. Like, that's the funniest thing.
Yeah.
Like, Slotkin, I remember like a month ago, was announcing to everybody that Kamala Harris is underwater in the state of Michigan.
And how did that, how did it just miraculously happen that Alyssa Slotkin's polling and Tammy Baldwin's polling and their campaign's view of Kamala Harris just found its way into a New York Times story?
Yeah, weird, right?
That's a turtle on a fence post.
It's not just in Michigan. In Pennsylvania, Bob Casey magically has not been at any of these Kamala rallies.
And I was going to say, I noted that as well.
Tough scheduling.
As I travel around, our candidates have been pointing out that increasingly they are avoiding Kamala Harris like they avoided Joe Biden earlier in this cycle.
Yeah.
Like, look, the big switcheroo gave the Democrats like some new life or joy, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Because they felt like they were going to avoid certain doom with Joe Biden. But let's remember that until like a day before the big switcheroo, the biggest obstacle to the big switcheroo was Joe Biden and Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi all thought Kamala Harris
could win.
Didn't have what it takes.
And so did the
to win a
media,
presidential election.
right? She went from a punchline to a president, like real quick, overnight.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And so did Democratic primary voters in 2019.
Right.
Remember, she didn't even make it to the starting line in 2020.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and she had everything lined up
Yep.
for her in 2019. In fact, I think it's worth taking a step back and just thinking about the way the Democratic Party power establishment in this country has plowed her path to this point, and she still can't get to the end of the path. So,
Well, at some point she has to talk.
she was assistant district attorney, and Willie Brown helped get her elected to prosecutor in San Francisco. And then in 2010, she runs for attorney general, and she was losing. She was losing in California to a Republican. And Barack Obama went to campaign for her in October of 2010 as he was about to lose like 80 House seats. Yeah. Like, think about that. It'd be like Donald Trump campaigning for an attorney general in Wyoming or Alabama.
Right.
Like, I'm sure they've got great attorney generals, and we want every state to have a good one, but why would the president spend his time in California? It's because the Obama team viewed her as the female Obama in many ways. And then in 2014, 2015, again, it's paved her path to the Senate. Barbara Boxer announced she was retiring. It was made clear by the Obama White House and powerful Democrats in California that no one was going to run against Kamala Harris. I think they ended up having one of the Sanchez sisters.
Yeah.
from
No,
San Diego.
infamously during the debate, Sanchez dabbed during the debate.
Oh my God!
And I think Kamala basically won at that moment. But that is the stiffest competition she has ever faced in the state of California.
All in a blue state. And then even like she gets elected, and a lot of the Obama campaign team worked for her in 2019. She had this big 20,000 person kickoff. She had a big moment when she called Joe Biden a racist segregationist. Never having thought through the next steps, like, oh, so do you support forced busing across school district lines in 2024? But then as voters got to see more and more of her, as she had to compete outside the blue bubble of California, as she no longer had people like Barack Obama and his team and Nancy Pelosi to plow her path forward, she just totally disintegrated. And, I mean, she was plucked back out of obscurity from Joe Biden. But again, it's not like she was a great vice president.
Right.
No,
right.
She was influential and carried the day on policy the way Dick Cheney did, or that she was, working hand in glove with the president, although she claims she was.
Yeah. And so
all
does
the
he.
time. So does
Helpfully
he.
enough.
So it's not surprising to me that after the Democrats got past their initial sugar high and had it kind of recharged at their convention, eventually the reality of Kamala Harris is setting in again to most Democrats and, more importantly, most voters.
Yeah. Well, tell me, because I mean, look, you've been traveling all over the place. What's your sense of where things are at right now? I mean, look, every state that you mentioned going to, other than Montana, if we're talking about Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, certainly, I mean, critical here. And everything, it seems like it's sort of on the head of a pin if you look at the polling. But I'm interested in your observations on the ground. Like, what are you seeing?
Very positive, lots of enthusiasm in relatively small communities. We're getting very large crowds. I was out with Tim Sheehy in Lewiston, Maine. It's very small. This is not Billings or Bozeman, and we had over 250 people show up. And you see that repeated over and over again. Earlier this week with Eric Hovde, we probably had 100 people each in a couple different stops for town halls.
So people are into it.
They're very much into it. They're very motivated to get out and vote for President Trump and to vote for these Republican Senate candidates as well. And I think it is very close. It's going to be very close. So if you're listening or watching, you should go out and early vote now if your state allows it.
Yeah.
Don't let election day contingencies interfere with your vote, and then spend that time getting more people to vote, because it will be close. But I'm pretty confident that President Trump is going to win, and that we're going to win a majority as well. Most people are very dissatisfied with the direction of the country, and they should be, because President Trump, again, I know the libs hate his style and his manner and everything about him, but I mean, what was so bad about President Trump's tenure for you and your family?
Right. Especially
I
by
mean,
contrast.
concretely, materially, you had high employment with rising wages, especially working class wages. You had stable prices. You had a border that was secure, and you had a largely stable, peaceful world. It wasn't like perfect. It wasn't like the Garden of Eden out there in the world, but you didn't have the chaos we see now. And with Biden and Harris, everything's gone to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah.
We have record high inflation. Wages are down in real dollars because of that inflation. Obviously, the border's been a total disaster. And you have wars starting everywhere, left and right, that Joe Biden can't seem to find a way to bring to a satisfactory conclusion.
That's what I want to ask you about. I mean, you have some expertise on foreign affairs, and if you look around the world, you've got war breaking out in the Middle East. You have war in Ukraine. And I'm just wondering if you think Kamala Harris is the right person to lead the globe away from World War III.
No, of course not. If anything, she's more likely to stumble into a broader conflict. President Trump says often that the Ukraine war wouldn't have happened on his watch. In fact, I told him a couple of years ago, I was like, you're being too modest. You shouldn't say it wouldn't have happened on my watch. You say it didn't happen on my watch. It happened when Barack Obama was president. It happened when Joe Biden was president. It did not happen. In fact, it seems like Vladimir Putin only invades Ukraine when Democrats are president.
Yeah.
And
But
that's,
I was
that's
told
a
that
joke, but it's a reality.
he
as
was
well.
Putin's puppet. I was told by the
I
Democrats.
was told reliable.
But I know. I remember in 2016 hearing that a lot, and even then, before the Russia hoax turned up or blew up in smoke, and even Mueller and all of his team of rabid anti-Trumpers couldn't find anything. Just think about in 2016, Hillary Clinton wanted to cut the defense budget. Trump wanted to increase it.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton never said anything about NATO's common defense spending. Donald Trump was always on NATO members' cases. Hillary Clinton wanted to transition away from fossil fuels to green energy. Donald Trump wanted America to be energy dominant. I mean, if you're sitting in the Kremlin, which one of those agendas do you like and which one do you not like? And it's the same thing now. But and I'd also say in the Middle East, I think that Biden and Harris embolden Iran and all of its proxies as well. I think they could get away with it, and they were probably right about it if you look at it. For a year now, at every turn, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have put more pressure on Israel than they put on Iran.
Right.
And this all happened, too, just weeks after, I should say, Ukraine. It all started happening just weeks after the debacle in Afghanistan. It wasn't public at the time. It's public now, but I saw on the Intelligence Committee, that Putin started marshaling his troops on Ukraine's border just a few weeks after the debacle in Afghanistan. And now at every turn, They put pressure on Israel. They preach de-escalation and conflict avoidance. Like sometimes the easiest way to end a conflict is to escalate the conflict and to show that you're the toughest kid on the block and you've got both the power and the will to put an end to it.
They have no clue. That is a concept that has eluded them for 40 years.
Yeah, and you had these debates in the Trump administration. I remember being a part of some of them, largely just as an observer. It was more debates inside the cabinet or the National Security Council, like, well, should we take the Qasem Soleimani strike? You know, if you recall, that was in the earliest days of 2020,
Right.
And it was in the late days of 2019 that Iran and its proxies in Iraq had struck some of our facilities in Iraq and wounded 4 soldiers and killed a contractor who'd served alongside our soldiers. And there was a menu of different potential options. And Trump went, with the advice of some of his cabinet members, with the strongest response, which was killing Qasem Soleimani. They also thought that he was flying around the region when they got him to orchestrate an even bigger response.
Yeah.
And there was concern of some of the administration, like, this is going to start World War III. This is going to start war with Iran.
Right.
My counsel to the president at the time was, this is likely to end the war. This is likely to end Iran trying to think they can gradually walk up the escalation ladder because you take 5 steps above them. And in the end, remember, it's Iran. It's not China. It's not Russia.
Right.
I mean, it's got an economy the size of Maryland's, and it's flying planes that we wouldn't use to train our brand new pilots in this country. So you can establish dominance here, and you can strike a blow for justice for all those soldiers who've been killed by Qasem Soleimani.
Well,
and that's what he did. And he was obviously
question, the right
worried,
call.
and he's rightly worried about the potential for a wider war. But strength and confidence and resolution didn't, in that case and so many others with President Trump or with President Reagan, it didn't lead to war. It led to peace, and it led to us achieving our objectives. And that's something that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden just don't seem to get. I mean, for 4 years, Uncle Sam has had a kick me sign on his back, and that'll certainly be the case for the next 4 years of Kamala Harris as president. I mean, honestly, it's bad enough to think about her, laughing her way through a State of the Union address or dealing with, tax policy. Just imagine Kamala Harris sitting down with Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin.
Right.
I mean,
Can't.
it's a ridiculous,
It's a terrifying-
risible scenario.
Yeah, terrifying proposition. So look, I know you're focused all your efforts on the campaign to make sure that we win this thing, but you're also very, very close to President Trump. You're obviously very, very close to your colleagues in the Senate. You're running for leadership this time around. You're going to play a huge role one way or another on the back end of this election. If President Trump is elected, turning this whole ship around doesn't happen overnight. I imagine you've had conversations with President Trump and your colleagues in the Senate about, like, look, this is what we got to get to work on. I imagine that the work would begin right away.
It will. It won't turn around overnight, but if you recall, I mean, things got a lot better right after the election in 2016. You had a big stock market
No
jump.
question.
And Trump always liked to take credit for that. Those are my gains. And he was right to take credit for it.
Yeah.
Because people were investing in the stock market in November 2016 onward in the expectation of a strong economy.
That he did exactly what he ended up doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
It's a
same
good bet.
thing with border crossings. You saw border crossings start to decline in the transition in 2016 because foreigners got the sense from the campaign that
Right.
Trump wasn't going to tolerate that. And you saw them begin to increase. You saw some of those migrant caravans start in the transition in 2020 because the word was out. Biden could get in. Right. I mean, I remember being at the border in March of 2021. And, that big group of senators, kind of a dog and pony show. I grabbed one of the Border Patrol officers and went over and talked to some of the migrants, just the two of us, so he could translate. It's cold, they're huddled under a bridge. And I asked them, why did they come? And, not a single one said, well, I was being persecuted because of my religion or because of my political views or my race. They all said things like, to get a job, or because I could get in, or one just said Biden.
Biden.
I remember in 2016.
Like, I got the message, buddy.
Yeah.
I remember in the winter of 2016, if you recall, it was about 6 months after Angela Merkel had basically opened the door to Europe. Essentially saying in the summer of 2015 during the migrant crisis out of Libya and out of Syria and all the way back to Afghanistan, that if you could make it, you could get in. We'd let you stay.
Right.
And obviously that's just supercharged
Worked
migrant
out,
flows.
Worked out exactly as you would imagine it.
And when I was there, I was in some Balkan nations, and they'd gotten these migrant flows down to a very precision bureaucratic process because they were worried that one day Germany would pull down the gate, so Austria would pull down the gate, and then on down the line them, and they'd be stuck with like 1 million migrants from Syria and Libya and Afghanistan and Iraq. And so they were moving them along. They had trains moving every day. They'd get you off the train. They'd get you your food and water. They'd put you on a bus and take you across the border to Croatia. We were in Serbia.
And the thing that gets me is it's not all the huddled masses.
No.
You have fighting age dudes from Tajikistan and China and Venezuelan criminals. That's what really scares people.
Oh, we were walking around. It was John McCain was still living there, and he was leading a delegation to the Munich Security Conference, and that's where we stopped. And I remember talking to some folks. They were in a family, several families. Like it was not just like one guy. It was often like large families,
right?
Clans. And it's like, oh, we left Iraq because of ISIS. And I go, where are you from? And they're from part of Iraq that ISIS had never had any fighting at all. But then best moment.
I'm vaguely aware.
I'm familiar.
The best moment, and because it reminded me of dealing with our translators in Iraq. You get out, something happened, you tell your translator, like, ask him what happened, and he'd ask a very short question, and then the Iraqi guy would give like a long, forward 3-minute answer, and then I'd finally say, like, what did he say? And he said he didn't see anything. And like, you talk for 3 hours or 3 minutes. You talk for 3 minutes, and he's like, well, Iraqi, they're
they like to express themselves.
They're very expressive. So we have this Afghan elder, and he's got like 30 family members with him. And McCain goes up to him and has a translator, and they're speaking, I guess, probably Pashto or Dari or something. McCain asks his question, the translator translate it, and the tribal elder starts talking. After literally one word out of his mouth, I walked away because I didn't need to hear the 3-minute explanation that came after it or the translation, because the first word out of his mouth wasn't Pashto or Dari. The first word out of his mouth was Merkel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Even in Afghanistan.
Huh.
And also, I'd say to the point, like, when they got off the train and they went into the train station where they're going to be transferred to buses to make the next leg of their journey, what was the first thing they asked for? They didn't ask for food. They didn't ask for water. They didn't ask for the bathroom. They asked, where can I charge my smartphone?
Really?
Yeah.
Because they're all, again, it's just so different than what mass migration was 20 years ago.
But this is the common
100 years
thread
ago.
with the Biden administration, right? I mean, this is their view of the world.
Yeah, you make some dangerous journey, whether it's from Latin America or Africa or Asia. You get here, you get in the United States, you immediately get on your phone and send a message back like, hey, I got in.
I'm in.
You can come too.
Jeez, it's unbelievable. Well, listen, I know we got to get out of here. You've got a ton of work to do. Can't thank you enough, first of all, for all you're doing for President Trump and for all of our Senate candidates. When this is all said and done, we get across the finish line, Fellows going to buy you a beer for a job,
Beer and a
well
birthday
done.
cake.
Yeah, a beer and a birthday cake.
Yeah.
Be a nice touch.
Yeah.
You don't have to bring the drug package that we had at the...
That's one of the many things we're putting into on day one of the Trump administration. We're not going to be mailing out crack pipes to American citizens anymore, or to illegal migrants for that matter.
Right, exactly. But many thanks for this and all you've done for the Variety program over the years. So let's close this thing out, huh?
Thank you.
Right,
I'm very proud to see what you guys have grown this into. Honored to be your first guest.
Yeah, this is sort of the careful.
One day I'll be your last guest.
Probably right. Thanks again, Tom.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Man, how can you not love that guy? He is just the best, and his routine appearances on Sunday mornings has been a real treat this fall.
Totally. I mean, you've got, typically with politicians, you get workhorses and show horses, and occasionally you get people who are both. That's what we got here with Tom Cotton. He can do both.
Yeah, between him and JD, like all these left-wing Sunday morning hosts have been catching a beating this season.
Totally. Catching a beating right to the face.
Great.
And look, they're young.
Yeah.
Right?
We're going to have that for a while.
We're going to have this kind of thing for a while. There's a whole new crop of people, a lot to be excited about. We're excited. And remember, you got to tune in at 8 o'clock on Friday for our special third episode of the week where we're just going to have fun and give you a whole rundown of everything in the week's events and more. You got to like and subscribe to do it. Get your notifications from YouTube or wherever you get your audio and podcasts. Smug, I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode. Gentlemen, thank you so much, Senator Cotton, for being on the show. Remember, folks, in North Carolina, early voting is underway. Get your vote in for President Trump, and let's win this thing. So, until next time, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Friday. Stay ruthless.